My husband got deployed overseas. I was home alone with 2 kids. Every night around midnight, I'd hear knocking on the back door. No one was there. I set up cameras. It was our neighbor, crawling through our bushes, tapping on windows, then running back to his shed. I reported it. His wife apologized. But then I got a letter in the mail saying I was being watched for suspicious solo behavior. It was from the HOA. When I attended the meeting to defend myself, my neighbor stood up and said, "I don't think her husband's even real. I live in a quiet suburb outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. My husband, Mark, is in the Army. Last summer, he got deployed overseas for a year. That left me alone with our 2 kids, Tyler, 8, and Mia, 5. The first few weeks were hard, but we settled into a routine. I kept the porch light on at night and double-checked the locks. I wasn't scared, just cautious. Then, about 3 weeks in, I started hearing knocking at the back door. Always around midnight. Not loud, just a few soft taps. I'd peek through the blinds, but no one was there. I figured maybe it was the wind or a tree branch. But it kept happening. Every night. Same time. One night, I got brave and opened the door right after the knocking. Nothing. Just a dark backyard. I started to feel uneasy. I told myself I was being paranoid. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. I decided to install security cameras. I got a basic system that covered the front and backyards. I didn't tell anyone, not even the kids. The first night after setting them up, I stayed up late, watching the live feed on my phone. Around midnight, I saw movement in the backyard. A figure emerged from the bushes, crawled up to the back door, tapped on it, then ran back into the bushes. I froze. I replayed the footage. It was a man. He was wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap. He moved quickly, like he knew exactly where the cameras were. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called the police and showed them the footage. They said they patrolled the area but couldn't do much without identifying the person. I decided to show the video to my neighbor Sarah. She and her husband, Tom, lived next door. We weren't close, but we exchanged pleasantries. Sarah watched the video and gasped. "That looks like Tom," she said quietly. I was stunned. "Are you sure?" She nodded slowly. "I think so. I'm so sorry." She promised to talk to him and make sure it stopped. A week later, I received a letter from the Homeowners Association. It accused me of suspicious solo behavior and warned that I was being watched for potential violations. I was baffled. I hadn't done anything wrong. I called the HOA office and asked for clarification. They said they'd received complaints about me acting strangely at night and having unknown visitors. I explained the situation, the knocking, the cameras, the police report. They said they'd look into it. I felt like I was losing my mind. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting to defend myself. When I arrived, the room was filled with familiar faces, neighbors I'd waved to, shared small talk with. I stood up and explained everything. The knocking, the footage, the police report. Then Tom stood up. "I don't think her husband's even real," he said loudly. The room fell silent. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I've never seen him," Tom continued. "Maybe she made him up for attention." I was speechless. Sarah looked down, avoiding my gaze. I left the meeting in tears. I knew I had to do something. I compiled all the footage, the police report, and the HOA letter. I wrote a detailed account of everything that had happened. Then I posted it all online. On neighborhood forums, social media, anywhere I could. The response was overwhelming. People were outraged. Some recognized Tom from the footage. Others shared their own stories of harassment. The HOA was flooded with complaints. They launched an investigation. Tom was fined and removed from the HOA board. Sarah filed for divorce. I received apologies from several neighbors. I still don't feel completely safe. But I stood up for myself. And I made sure everyone knew the truth. After the HOA removed Tom from the board and fined him, I thought things would calm down. But they didn't. I started finding strange things in my yard. Dead flowers arranged in odd patterns. A broken doll on my porch. Once a note that simply said, "Watch your back." I reported everything to the police, but without proof, they couldn't do much. Then, one night, my car's tires were slashed. All 4 of them. I was terrified. I installed more cameras, this time with better night vision and motion detection. A few nights later, the cameras caught someone sneaking around my property. It was Tom. I called the police and showed them the footage. They arrested him for trespassing and vandalism. But the damage was done. I felt unsafe in my own home. Word spread quickly about Tom's arrest. Neighbors who had previously ignored me started reaching out, offering support. One neighbor, Lisa, organized a neighborhood watch. She said, "We can't let this happen to anyone else." Others brought meals, helped with yard work, and offered to walk me to my car. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of community. But I knew I couldn't let my guard down. With the help of a lawyer, I filed a lawsuit against Tom for harassment and emotional distress. The case went to court, and the evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the police reports, the HOA letters, all pointed to a pattern of stalking and intimidation. Tom was found guilty and ordered to pay damages. Sarah, who had divorced him, testified on my behalf. She said, "I had no idea how deep his obsession went. I'm so sorry." After the trial, things slowly returned to normal. I still have the cameras, and I still check them every night. But the knocking has stopped. The kids are doing better, and sources just when I thought the worst was behind me, I got another letter. This time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a notice for a formal HOA disciplinary hearing. They were accusing me of public defamation of a board member, inciting neighborhood unrest, and misuse of surveillance footage. I nearly laughed when I read it. After everything I'd been through, after showing the whole neighborhood that Tom had been creeping around my house at night, they were coming after me. But it wasn't funny. Not really. The letter said I could be fined up to $1,000 and forced to take down my cameras. It felt like a message: sit down, shut up, and stop making noise. I called Lisa, the neighbor who had organized the watch group. She was furious. "They're trying to save face," she said. "Tom was on the board. His buddies are trying to cover their own asses." We gathered every neighbor who'd helped me and drafted a petition. Over 40 households signed it, demanding the HOA drop the hearing and review their own practices. At the next HOA meeting, I brought my petition. And my lawyer. The board looked nervous. One of them, an older man named Ken, tried to shift the blame. "We didn't have all the information at the time," he said. My lawyer cut him off. "You had enough. You knew she was being stalked. You chose to go after her instead." Lisa stood up. "We want new elections. We want transparency. And we want this harassment to stop." That meeting changed everything. The board was forced to back down. The hearing was cancelled. New elections were scheduled. And I ran for the board. At first, I didn't think I'd win. I was still the woman who posted footage online, who stirred up trouble, who brought lawyers into neighborhood meetings. But something had changed. People started to see me not as a victim, but as someone who stood up when nobody else would. "I don't want to run things," I said during my speech. "I just want to make sure no one else goes through what I did." I won by a landslide. Tom's friends were voted out. Once I got access to board records, I started digging. What I found made my stomach turn. Tom and 2 other board members had filed multiple complaints against me, under fake names, starting before the knocking even began. They'd coordinated the letter about my suspicious solo behavior as a way to put pressure on me. And it wasn't just me, other single women in the neighborhood had also been quietly targeted, just never to this level. I brought it all to light. We held a community meeting and laid everything out. One woman cried. She said, "I thought it was just me. I thought I was crazy." I promised them we'd never go back to that. We rewrote the HOA bylaws to limit power, add transparency, and make sure the board couldn't retaliate like that again. Just when I thought we'd rooted out all the rot, something happened that chilled me more than anything before. It started with Mia, my youngest. One night, she came into my room crying. "Mommy, the bear is talking again," she said. I was half asleep. "What bear, honey?" "The one with the red eye," she whispered. I shot up. I remembered the teddy bear with the tiny blinking light she'd found in the community yard sale a few weeks ago. It looked like a cheap toy. I hadn't thought twice. I grabbed the bear and tore it open right there in the kitchen. Inside, buried deep, was a tiny black device. A hidden camera. My hand shook as I pulled it apart and saw the wires. This wasn't some spy toy for kids. This was real surveillance gear. I took it to the police the next morning. They confirmed it. It was a Wi-Fi-enabled nanny cam, the kind that could be watched live. My stomach dropped. How long had it been in our house? And who had been watching? The officer asked me to think back to where it came from. I remembered clearly. It had been from a cardboard box at the community yard sale, hosted by the HOA 3 weeks before. The one organized by Tom's buddy, Dennis. Dennis, who had mysteriously resigned after the election. I brought the camera to Lisa and a few others on the new board. We were horrified. We sent out a warning to the whole community, urging anyone who bought electronics at that yard sale to check them carefully. Within days, 2 more neighbors found similar devices, one in a lamp, another in a picture frame. It was bigger than just me. We called an emergency meeting and invited law enforcement. This time, people showed up in droves. Everyone wanted answers. And that's when Sarah, Tom's ex-wife, walked in. She asked to speak. Everyone let her. She looked nervous but determined. I knew Tom was obsessive, but I didn't know how far it went, she said. But Dennis was worse. He used to brag about keeping tabs on people in the neighborhood. Then she pulled out her phone. I found this in our shared storage unit. It was a hard drive. Full of labeled folders. Dates, times, house numbers. Including mine. The room went dead silent. The footage on the drive was handed over to authorities. Turns out, Dennis had been watching dozens of homes for months, if not longer. Using hidden cameras, cheap Wi-Fi bugs, even tapping into old and used cable lines in the neighborhood's infrastructure. The HOA board under Tom had known. At least some of them. And they let it happen. Some even encouraged it. The FBI got involved. It became a federal case. We found out Dennis had done this before. He had been quietly run out of another HOA 5 years earlier, after privacy concerns were raised. No charges stuck back then. This time they would. He was arrested, and several former board members were called in for questioning. The trial took almost a year to get to court. During that time, I kept my seat on the HOA board, but every week brought some new revelation. More footage. More victims. Even kids' bedrooms had been watched. The neighborhood was in shock. Dennis didn't deny it. His lawyers tried to argue mental instability, tried to blame PTSD from a failed security job years ago. But no one bought it. He knew what he was doing. He had kept detailed logs, folders labeled by names, even comments like, seems lonely, or, doesn't lock windows. Tom testified, reluctantly, under subpoena. He tried to act like he was just a bystander. But the prosecution shredded that. Emails, texts, even recorded HOA conversations where he joked about keeping the single ladies honest. I sat in that courtroom every day. I wanted them to see me. The woman they tried to break. The jury didn't take long. Dennis was found guilty on multiple federal charges: illegal surveillance, stalking, child endangerment, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Tom got 6 years for conspiracy and harassment. 3 other board members were banned from serving on any HOA or local committee again. 2 were sued by neighbors. 1 quietly moved away in the middle of the night. Justice felt good, but it didn't fix everything. My son Tyler developed sleep issues. He'd wake up crying, afraid there were people watching through his window. Mia wouldn't let any new toys into the house unless I checked their bellies first. I started seeing a therapist. I realized how close I came to breaking. There were nights I sat in the dark with a kitchen knife, wondering if I was just losing my mind. I didn't deserve any of that. But I also had to face something I hadn't admitted before. When the first letters came, when Tom accused me in front of everyone, I stayed quiet too long. I let fear stop me from fighting back right away. I let their power scare me. That was my mistake. One I won't make again. About 2 months after Dennis was sentenced, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo. It was from my backyard camera, the very first night I'd caught the shadow in the bushes. On the back, someone had written in blocky, shaky handwriting. You won this time. But the cameras don't watch everything. I called the police. They opened an investigation, but there were no fingerprints. No usable DNA. They think it was a prank. I'm not so sure. I kept the cameras. I upgraded them again. I still serve on the HOA board, but now we have monthly open meetings, posted minutes, and a rotating audit. We even started a community outreach program to check in on seniors and single parents. I've found my strength again. But it came at a price. Mark came home 6 months ago. We're working through everything together. He blamed himself at first, said he should have seen something coming, should have insisted we move before his deployment. I told him the truth. The evil didn't come from outside. It was next door, smiling at us over the fence. Watching. Judging. Creeping. Now, every time someone moves into the neighborhood, I introduce myself with a firm handshake, a direct look, and just enough of the story to let them know, this street doesn't forget. And we're watching back now.